improvement center is going to come into Easton, my expectation is that to feel viable, they would feel they need to be larger than 65,000 square feet. So I think, the prospective purchaser then turned and asked the question that President Cook asked, well, where are the other sites where I could be in this market, where I could propose a larger store? And I think that analysis, as Lynn confirmed, and I think we've looked at it, and I think these folks have looked at it, I don't think there are any sites. And, absent tearing down buildings and consolidating lots of small properties, I don't think there's a ready opportunity. And more importantly, perhaps, I think this particular home improvement center thinks that, again, being on the east side of town is more desirable to them because that's a market they feel like they should serve and where the growth is planned. So they came back to us and they said, would you go back to the town and see if the town would change that rule so that we could come forward and propose, a store on your property that meets, our requirements, which is going to be larger again than the 65,000 square feet. And so we certainly agreed to do that, and that's what has brought us here before the council this evening. We've been very clear that, if the council does adopt this text amendment, which I certainly hope you will, that there's no guarantee or even suggestion that ultimately a project will be approved. But rather what will be permitted is that this home improvement center can then proceed with a design, bring that design forward to the town council. The town council can lay it out to the public, and we can have a robust discussion in the context of an actual concrete plan about the pros and cons of a home improvement center. And I guess if you're of the mind that no way, no how, we don't want another home improvement center in Easton, then there's no point in making that change is not necessary. And certainly I suspect there are folks in our community that have that opinion. I also think there are probably folks in our community that would say, can't get here soon enough, open the door, let's bring them in. I respect both those opinions. I don't necessarily share either one. Personally, I feel like it would be worthwhile to be open and to allow a project to come forward for consideration as long as the council maintains that absolute safeguard of discretionary review authority so that, we could have an informed discussion amongst the community and the council and make a determination whether or not any particular proposal is demonstrably beneficial to the community. And I certainly believe, based on some anecdotal discussions and my own observations, that there is interest in it. And, I think there's interest in a broader selection of the types of products that home improvement centers offer, some healthy competition with the existing store in Easton, certainly the large number of jobs that such a store could create. I think Lowe's has 130 plus employees, significant increases to local tax base and generation of annual tax revenues. And those are all positives. At the same time, I'm sure there would be concerns about potential impacts to nearby residential properties, traffic, about impacts on design and community character, all very important considerations and things that the town necessarily needs to make sure would be adequately addressed. But through that process, through that PUD process, a proposal could come forward, could be put in front of the community, and we could have an informed discussion and weigh those pros and cons and determine if such a proposal is appropriate. So I would ask the council to adopt the text amendment, to allow that project to ultimately come forward. No guarantee it's going to be approved, but, let's see. And, Greg and I both, born and raised in this town, we've lived here all our lives. We care deeply about Easton, as I know you do, as I think everybody in this room does. And we're certainly not suggesting that you should set aside the rules and just, open the door to anything and everything. I'm not saying that. But I do think we should be open to considering a proposal to invest millions of dollars in our community and weigh the pros and cons, particularly when we know we can always say no if it's not appropriate. And so for that reason, I would certainly encourage the council to adopt that amendment. I did want to touch on just a few additional things if I could. One being the Planning Commission's recommendation. I certainly have deep respect for the Planning Commission, and I think, as you know from their letter, they reviewed this project and gave it a lot of thought and discussion. In the end, they didn't necessarily favor or disfavor it. Clearly, they didn't favor it at this time. Their letter doesn't say it's consistent or inconsistent with the plan. What the letter says is we should delay the discussion of this until the next comprehensive plan, which on its face makes a lot of sense. I mean, I understand. The problem is that that approach will result in a very significant delay of the community's consideration of a second home improvement center in Easton. And you know, the town has not yet begun this next comprehensive plan. That process takes years. And that's not even the end of it. Like, let's say we go through that process and the determination is made, we should move forward and allow this. Then there is a second step of implementing those changes to advance the objectives of the plan through text changes. And that process can take several years. I'll tell you, this very month, the town's planning commission is considering text amendments to implement the objectives of the 2010 plan. I mean, we are 11 years after that plan was adopted, and we're still in that process. And that's no disrespect. That process takes time. It's important work. I'm not saying that. But it would be a very significant delay. There's interest in our community now. You know, wouldn't anticipate, who knows what interest may be down the road, but I wouldn't anticipate that it may still be there. And I think, most importantly, notwithstanding what, you know, that prospective home improvement center may want, I think most folks in Easton would rather consider it sooner or later. And that's my own suspicion. I don't know for sure, but that's my thought. So, all due respect to the Planning Commission, I don't think we should wait that long to consider this further. Also, I wanted to touch on the comp plan, and you know, there's this suggestion by TPA, and I'm confident we'll hear it again from tonight from my friend Mr. Alsbach, that, you know, this text amendment is inconsistent with the plan. And well, first of all, I would say it's worth noting that there is no requirement in the town code that a text amendment, quote, be consistent with the plan. And I would say the council has, over time, somewhat routinely, on an annual basis, considered text amendments and not really measured them against the plan one way or another. There are certain actions that the town takes that you must make a finding of consistency with the plan, like annexations, like rezonings. Those things require it. Text amendments do not strictly require it. That said, obviously the plan is very important, and I'm not suggesting you should cast it aside, but I just wanted to note that for the record. And all that said, I think this proposal is consistent with the plan. I disagree with that assertion. And I think, you know, if you look at their position and what they put in writing, and I think the comments to the Planning Commission, perhaps what we'll hear tonight, it focuses largely on page 123 of the plan, and this statement that, you know, from 2010 through 2016, that major retail should play a very limited role in Easton. And so just a couple things to note there. One, the time horizon on that, 2016, we're obviously 5 years past, you know, that date that's contemplated in the plan. The other thing is it doesn't say no role in Easton. It doesn't say prohibited. It says limited role. And I think you have to look to other sections of the plan to help inform what does limited role mean in this context. And I'd point council to page 122 of the plan, which states, the preference for new major retail opportunities should be given to expansion of existing establishments, especially if part of an existing shopping center, followed by the development of new sites identified in this plan as appropriate for regional scale commercial development. And so I think we talked already about there not being any readily available opportunities for this within or adjacent to an existing shopping center. So my read of the plan would suggest that the next best candidate sites are other areas contemplated in the plan for regional scale commercial development. Well, what does that mean? And I think I'd point you to page 40 of the comp plan, which states, the role of new regional scale retail development in Easton's future will be limited. This is not to say new regional retail will be prohibited. It will simply be limited to existing undeveloped commercially zoned properties and the redevelopment of Easton's older shopping centers. And this is precisely what brings us to you tonight, are existing undeveloped commercially zoned properties in the town of Easton. These are the sites that we believe are appropriate, and I think the plan supports, are appropriate for the town's consideration, not necessarily your approval. That's yet to be determined. We'll see what the proposal is. But appropriate for consideration for new major retail uses. So I certainly think that's worth noting. Also, the TPA has asserted that if you approve this text amendment, it's a disservice to all the folks that participated back in the 2010 comprehensive planning process. And, you know, I was one of those people, so I certainly appreciate that sentiment. But two things. One, well, a couple of things. One, again, the opinions that were expressed were about this time horizon going to 2016, which obviously were passed. Also, again, the text of the code doesn't say no major retail. It doesn't say prohibition of major retail. It says limited role. And as we talked about, what limited role means. And also I would say that we have to acknowledge that while many, many wonderful people participate in that process, it's not necessarily a broad cross-section of our community. We're talking about the people, you know, that come out and participate in that comprehensive planning process. Very worthy and good opinions we should value, but not necessarily the sentiments and opinions of everyone in our town. And again, what we're trying to do with this amendment, and I would say what I think TPA is trying to foreclose here in their opposition to this, is a community discussion of a project with no obligation to approve, but allow the community to come forward and discuss a proposal. And not in the abstract, but with a concrete plan that we can roll out and all look at and make informed comments and suggestions and raise concerns about. And so I think that is very important and something that the community should clearly want to facilitate. And last point on that, I would say, in my experience as a planner, I often found that there was more interest, sometimes different interest, in the context of a specific plan versus the abstract comprehensive plan. Again, not diminishing the comprehensive planning process, but you know, when you get an application near your home, or a store that you care deeply about, a store that you drive a great distance to go to and you patronize, or a place that you think would be a great source of employment, you may be more motivated to come out and offer your opinions to council than you would, you know, in the context of an abstract comprehensive planning process. So again, I think it's worthwhile to allow the community at this time to come forward and have that discussion and that debate, and ultimately let the council make a decision. I would say, last thing on the comp plan, although a consistency requirement isn't necessary per se for the text amendment, it is required for the PUD application. So again, in the context of a PUD plan, the council, the community, would certainly measure it against the comp plan. And again, there can be some debate about, is it consistent, is it not? The comp plan is several hundred pages. I think with most proposals you could find some areas of consistency, some inconsistency, and you have to do this balancing. So that's important, and I think you could have a more meaningful discussion if in the context of a specific plan. Also, at the Planning Commission meeting, and we may hear it again this evening, the TPA asserted that, you know, I'm off base on this discretionary review and approval authority, and I just, that assertion is incorrect and directly contradicted, you know, by the very plain language of the town code. And I'd point council to section 28-801H3B of the code, which states in pertinent part, and this is in the PUD section, if the town council makes an affirmative finding of fact as to each of the criteria listed above, which are these legal findings for PUD, the council may enact an ordinance granting the proposed PUD application. The fact that an application for a PUD zoning map amendment complies with the specific requirements listed above shall not require the town council to grant the application. And the council has certainly exercised their legislative discretion in the past to deny PUDs. So I don't think there's any dispute about that. TPA further asserted that if you did deny an application, it may open the town up for a legal challenge. I'm not sure if that comment is attributable to a lack of knowledge of the code or if it's a scare tactic, but either way, I think based on that section I just pointed you to, I think that is legally incorrect. Two more comments. One, Mr. Thomas raised possibility of some revisions to the proposed text amendment at the Planning Commission. I think the Midshore Board of Realtors in their letter to the council referenced the same, of adding a qualifier to say that the council may consider home improvement centers in excess of that size on ground zone CL. We certainly have no objection to that. I think in reality, the only place you could really see a future application would be on CL's own ground, but we certainly don't have any issue with that qualification. And so that's all I have. In closing, I just wanted to reiterate one more time, I think what's being asked of the council is merely to allow an application to come forward and be considered without obligating the town to approve anything. We've been very clear with the folks that we've communicated with that there should be no expectation that the town will approve. But I would hope that our elected leaders, that our community would be interested in receiving a proposal, considering it, discussing it, going through that very participatory public process to determine if ultimately it's worthy of that PUD entitlement. If it is, great, the project can move forward. If it's not, the council can simply say no. And so with that, I'm happy to answer any questions. Otherwise, I would like the opportunity to come back if there are any follow-up.
Anyone have any questions for Mr. Smith?
Thank you.
Zach, I did have, I guess, a question for you.
Of course.
And you may have said the answer, but you talked about getting the public into an informed discussion. And the comprehensive plan has had a few amendments, and there's been a lot of participation in that plan and a lot of discussion around the term big box, which this qualifies under because it's over 65,000 square feet. They talked about the impacts to residential development and traffic and things like that. That kind of things are discussed in the comprehensive plan. What is the reason your applicant doesn't want this discussed during that process and would prefer to bring it to us now? Is it timing?
It's solely timed.
Okay.
And I did want, if I could just add to that, the plan talks a lot about major retail. And I hope council recognizes major retail is a term of art in our community, and that's any retail over 25,000 square feet. And again, we could propose that today on these subject properties. This isn't opening up new areas to major retail. What it is allowing us to propose a home improvement center that exceeds that size. But to your point, Ms. Cook, absolutely, that's the only reason. The only hesitation is just the length of time that process would take. And we're not trying to sidestep the community review. We're not trying to sidestep and I say we, ultimately it's this prospective purchaser. It's just that they want to have it in the context of a concrete plan that can be presented and kicked around.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right, this is a public hearing on Ordinance 756. If you have any comment, I encourage you to come to the microphone, state your name and your address, and let us know your thoughts.
Seeing other papers, I'll hobble up here. Good evening, council members. Tom Alsbach, speaking on behalf of Tower Preservation Alliance, but I'm also speaking, at least indirectly, on behalf of some other folks and organizations. One would be the literally hundreds of Easton residents who participated in, collaborated on over a period of a couple of years, and pulled together your current comprehensive plan that has been the subject of a lot of discussion tonight, and which gave rise to the decision that was made by the Planning Commission. Would also speak on behalf of the Planning Commission that adopted unanimously this plan some years ago, representing all the citizens. Now, the discussion that just preceded mine focused on this comprehensive plan to a significant degree, but what the issue really is the statute in your code that restricts big box development under the current rendition of it to sites that are in or adjacent to existing shopping centers. Now that code provision was adopted consistently with the comprehensive plan, and Lynn Thomas's email gets into that, was adopted unanimously by your predecessors, by this town council, after great consideration by all the people that were affected by it. So this is not I think Zach's letter talks about a small local minority that would oppose what's being proposed here. And That's not so. What's in front of you is an effort to change the work of your predecessors on the council, the prior planning commission, and again, hundreds and hundreds of people who participated in that process. Now, in terms of the planning commission, the current planning commission that unanimously voted not to approve or recommend that you approve this proposed text amendment. That was the second time they reached that decision. They reached that decision back in the spring of this year as well, essentially the same result as they reached when it was brought to their attention again in November. And again, their decision was based on, in part, on some of the things I've just alluded to, that this proposed text amendment raises what has been, over the last 20, 25 years, probably the most contentious, controversial issue regarding development that the town of Easton has faced. It started back in the late 1990s when the council adopted a moratorium on big box development, continued through the 2004 plan, I guess actually the 97 plan, 04 plan, the current plan. And there was lots and lots of discussion about this over the years. This is not some minor matter that we're being asked to tweak in the town ordinance. This is something that goes to the very heart of how this town should develop in terms of its commercial enterprises from the perspective of the citizens who participated, not only the citizens who participated in this plan, but also your predecessors on the town council who adopted the ordinance that the applicant would like to change. So this really should not be a complicated matter. Okay, maybe it'll be another later this summer and 18 months getting into the heart of the new comprehensive plan. But that is where all of these issues that Zach was alluding to should be discussed with application to the entire community, not just this particular site. Who knows? Maybe the consensus of this community is we don't want a Home Depot here where they're proposing it. We want a Costco over here, or we want a Sam's Club over there, or we don't want any of those things. Who knows? But this discussion should be taking place in the context of what is going to affect the entire community east and west of Route 50 for the whole next planning period. So it's wrong to say, well, let's adopt this change to the zoning ordinance. Then we can bring forward our plan, and the community can have this discussion about what's the impact on downtown Easton, what's the impact on traffic. No, that's wrong. The discussion should be, what is the impact of further large major retail, big box, for lack of a better word, development on the entirety of the town and the entirety of the areas in the town, because maybe there's someplace better in the town of Easton that would be more suitable for larger retail. But we haven't gotten into that because it's not on the table now, and it would not be on the table if you changed the law and they brought forward a plan to do this home improvement store, because all you would be restricted to considering is that one site. And by the way, speaking of that site, if you look, and I don't want to get too far into the weeds here, but maybe just a little bit, in the high grass. If you look in this current comprehensive plan, there were some special development areas that were considered, and there's a map of them. They were numbered 1 through 7 or 8, I believe. And there's a map in the back you can find. And there was this area 4, which is on Route 50, right across Chapel Road from the site that would be proposed for this home improvement store. And what the comprehensive plan decided with regard to that area is that the biggest problem with proposals for this site is that regional scale commercial development at this site is ill-suited to handle such development. The site is more logically suited for transient-oriented commercial development. And that's, in fact, what has evolved there, Chipotle and Olive Garden and so forth. But this plan has already concluded that that area on Route 50 is not suitable for large-scale commercial development. In fact, the discussion, I think, of Area 4, or one of the other ones, alludes to the fact that there was a Home Depot application that was abandoned for that site some years ago. So we don't believe that this should be a complicated matter for the council. We think that the rationale offered by the Planning Commission is quite straightforward and should be followed. We think that all the things that Zach suggested should be considered, could be and will be considered in the context of amending, revising the current comprehensive plan. And that's fine. But let's have this discussion in the context of the entire community, development of the entire community, and not just a new PUD where you're restricted to considering impact on development of this nature in one specific location. I understand, I've been coming to meetings and talking about these kinds of things for a long time, longer than I would like to admit. I moved here in 1976, so I've been here for a long time too. Not as long as these fellows who were born here, but in fact, Greg knows when I moved here, we rented a house from his parents at that time. And I got into these issues back in the 90s, I guess it was, but it seems like forever. And every time that I've appeared and spoken about these kinds of issues, what I really always hear, without exception, from the development interests, is that we have to do this now. We can't have delay. This is our opportunity. We got to move ahead. Well, Home Depot first said that back in 1999 when we were trying to put a store where the Talbot Commerce Park is now on Glebe Road, and instead we got what we have now instead of a Home Depot out there because they gave up. And we heard it again, some 10 years later. We're hearing it again now. Look, there's ample opportunity to acquire home improvement items in the town of Easton right now that will certainly tide us over for another 9 months, 18 months, or whatever. I'm in the process right now of, rehabbing a rental property that I'm going to put on the market when it's finished. And so you can go. I just sort of jotted them down here. You can go into the town of Easton, and every kind of home improvement item you want is available here in our own existing stores. You can get hardware, lumber, rugs, flooring, roofing, furniture, bathroom equipment and fixtures, paint and varnish, appliances, lighting materials, garden supplies. All those things that are available at Lowe's are also available in our stores in the heart of downtown Easton, which we want to sustain and prosper. And so when we revise this comprehensive plan, we're going to have to be very, very careful about whether the impact of further big boxes would, in effect, foreclose the viability of some of these local stores that we rely upon in our community. So my only point really, though, is that the community is not disabled or disadvantaged by the fact that we might have to wait another 18 months to decide if we're going to expand where big box home improvement stores can be located, or any other big box stores can be located. We're doing just fine with what we got, and we believe that we should just leave that status quo in place until the entire community can be brought into a comprehensive discussion about whether to relax the current regulation, current restriction on big box development that's been in place for all these years after being approved by your predecessors on the town council. And I hopefully look forward to having those discussions with you at a later date. I'm sure a lot of people look forward to those discussions at a later date. But let's make that happen at a later date and not right now for the benefit of just one big box operator that might foreclose a lot of other good alternatives for larger retail development elsewhere in the community, all of which should be considered comprehensively and at the same time. So Zach and I disagree on a couple of legal issues that he raised. I'm not going to take your time to go through some esoterica about those things tonight. The big picture is that I implore you to follow the recommendation of the Planning Commission and just defer a decision on what to do about major retail development in this community until we wrap it into the comprehensive plan rewrite and get everyone involved with consideration of all the areas in this town that may or may not be appropriate for larger retail. So those are my comments, and thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor Willie, Council Chairman, Ms. Cook. My name is Jane Bowman, 221 South Hanson Street. I'm one of the worthy people, according to Zach. Worthy people worked on the comprehensive plan way back in the early 2000s. I was one that went to many, many meetings, heard many, many opinions on all aspects of what needed to happen in Easton. I think we came up with a really solid, comprehensive plan. It was adopted unanimously by the council. It was a very good direction for Easton to go in. And it seems to me that to jump ahead with a text amendment when these kinds of issues really should be considered in context of the whole comprehensive plan, it seems that that's inappropriate. So I also think that it's a very good thing to listen to your planning commission, who has certainly delved into this significantly and has denied the application twice, and just let it go to the next iteration of the comprehensive plan. So you got my speech very, very quickly. Thank you.
Thank you.
I will not refer to any legal documents during my discussion. Hi, I'm Talbone, and I'm the current chairman of the Planning and Zoning Commission. And you have copies of my letter, or our letter from the Planning and Zoning Commission regarding the text amendment request. Well, while the letter fully explains our decision, there are a few additional points that might help you in making the decision. First, this request asks for a text amendment without identifying a specific site. However, in the discussions, it appears that the Gannon property on the southeast side of Route 50 and Chapel Road intersection is the proposed site. The question you should ask is if the town wants another home improvement center, and is this the right site? There are perhaps 10 to 12 other sites to consider if you approve this text amendment. Is there another site that would be more beneficial to the town than the one suggested? The comprehensive plan development process would give you the answer to that question. Secondly, what's to prevent another organization, such as a membership-based warehouse club selling groceries, clothing, furniture, and lots of other stuff, from asking for a similar text amendment? The comprehensive plan shows where such a facility could be built and where it could not. Third, we've been told that we can say no to the project at any time. And I'm not sure whether we want to say yes or no. Rather, planning and zoning in the town would like to fully consider all the sites and make sure that the sites available are consistent with how the town sees itself growing. Thus, by denying the request, we're not saying no, but we are saying not at this time. We need to consider how the town's citizens want to see their town developed. And that's just what the comprehensive plan does. It gets the citizens' input. Thank you.
Mr. Bone? I'm sorry, is that all right if I ask you a quick question?
Sure.
Because I know that in Lynn's memo to the Planning Commission, you had options to add wording, I guess, or restrict even more the request to recommend it in a certain zone, you know, whether it's in the CL zone, for example. And did the Planning Commission think about that option at all? And if so, did they just feel that, again, the best place is the comp plan for all, for the whole discussion?
Yes, we considered Lynn's recommendation or thought on that particular thing, but we felt that the full analysis via the comprehensive plan was the way to go.
Oh. And that's more just to make sure that that was a proper site town-wide for
Correct.
such development? Okay.
Correct.
Thank you.
Good evening, council. I actually heard about this morning, and I heard about it. My name is Dustin Otto. I don't live here in Easton. I live in Ridgely now. I'm from Easton about 5 years ago. So I live at 24846 Branfield Drive, Ridgely. But I do work here at Easton for the town of Easton Public Works. I heard about this proposal, and they're naming it as the box store that it is. I got excited. I believe that this town deserves that growth. It needs that growth. As of now, so often you're finding so many people leaving this town to go to Delaware to get tax-free shopping, or to go to Salisbury, or have to go to Annapolis in order to receive that store. Everyone's dependent on whether Lowe's has that product or not. Most of the stores in town, to me, are just highly expensive, understanding they're mom and pop places, but you should be able to have that opportunity for the diverseness of competition. I believe in that. And most people, I've never seen a bad looking Home Depot yet. If that's the store that's coming here, I think it would look great on that corner. Right now, it's just an open field. It's also a business you can count on. There's businesses on Route 50 right now that have been closed for years, and how disappointing it is. Got these nice buildings and nothing occupying it. I also know that going to a big shopping center like Lowe's or a Home Depot, it's actually an experience. People go and they just browse. You're also going to be bringing people in from all of the areas around here. They're also going to shop other stores while they're here. They're also, so often my wife and I will do, grab lunch, grab something to eat, so the local restaurants are also going to benefit from it as well. That's all.
Thank you, President Cook. Just in closing, just to wrap up, I know you've gotten the comment. I understand you're going to leave the record open until Friday, as is the council's policy.
Actually, correct, till the next meeting.
The next meeting. Thank you. I just wanted to say, you know, I value all the comments that we've heard tonight. I know you do. I don't think there's a lot of disagreement in terms of this should be a decision that's up to the community, right? Mr. Alsbach said that. I think Mrs. Bowman made that point. Mr. Boone made that point in his report, right? So I think we agree on that. And I wouldn't say do this for the developer. I'm not saying that. Do this for the community. I think the disagreement between our positions, with all due respect, is the timing. And I think, you know, Mr. Alsbach suggests that we should look at the 2010 plan as cast in stone, and only through that process should we invite the public to come back in and have this discussion. And I'm of the mind, let's have that discussion now. You know, we have someone at the table that wants to invest millions of dollars in our community. Ultimately, they may not be something that we want to permit, but why not talk about it? And there's no reason why we can't consider these other sites and these other parts of town. through that discussion and that debate. The council has the discretion to say yes or no. You certainly have the discretion to bring in more discussion and consideration. And the only other point I wanted to make is just, again, this doesn't relate to any specific property. It's a text amendment of general application. But Mr. Alsbach referenced a specific property owned by my client and identified it as special area number 4 in the comprehensive plan. And that's certainly not the only site, and that's not even the site I think that we had in mind. So I think that might have been a little, I didn't want there to be any confusion about that. But, that just illustrates the point that as part of a specific proposal for a specific property, you would be able to measure that against the comprehensive plan. And if it was proposed on the site Mr. Alsbach alluded to, clearly that his comment would be very relevant to that. So please just be clear on that. And again, in closing, just please adopt the text amendment. Allow the community to come forward. I would want Mr. Alsbach to participate. I'd want all the hundreds of people that he suggested he speaks on behalf of to come and participate. Nobody is trying to shortcut the public process. To the contrary, we're trying to facilitate a public discussion to discern out whether or not a proposal that may come forward would be desirable and appropriate and ultimately warrant that PUD approval. Thank you.
Does anyone else have any comments on ordinance 756? Councilman, do you have any questions for staff?
Mr. Thomas, do you mind coming back up for a minute? Just a couple of questions, just for some history, some background for myself and maybe some of the council members, I don't know. Have there ever been amendments to the comp plan in the past that would allow for new commercial opportunities? Has there been changes in the past in that situation?
We certainly have amended the comp plan in the past. It's relatively rare as compared to amending the zoning ordinance. It is, by state law, it's a much more involved, certainly a longer process, I think in recognition of the magnitude, bigger picture level that kind of decision entails. But yes, and the most immediate example that comes to mind is the comprehensive plan includes priority areas for future growth of areas that are not currently in town. We have amended that map on 2 or 3 occasions.
We also did one for the hospital, and the
Okay.
regional care. We did a specific amendment at that time.
Yes.
And I'm not sure for Waterside Village if that was part of or whether that was an amendment. But
So they have occurred. Okay.
They have.
Has the council, to your knowledge anyway, ever overrode a 5-0 vote from the Planning and Zoning Commission? To the best of your knowledge. I know I'm
So-
putting you on the spot.
Just to clarify, it wouldn't be an override of their vote. They're making a recommendation
Right.
to you guys. There are, to my recollection, there are examples of really any combination there. I think more often than not, the council follows the Planning Commission's recommendation, but there have been times when the Planning Commission has recommended approval of an application and you have denied it, and they have recommended denial of an application that you have approved. The most recent example that I can think of is the proposed annexation of properties along St. Michael's Road, the Fusey property and the adjacent properties where the Planning Commission recommended approval of that annexation, and the Town Council denied the request. I don't think it was a unanimous Planning Commission recommendation, but I'm not certain of that.
I appreciate it. I'm just trying to get some background. Have there been any commercial ventures that were rejected by the council during the PUD phase? Again, to the best of your...
Yes, Lidl. Thank you. The proposed Lidl grocery store at Waterside Village was denied. Did it actually get to the council? I don't.
Yes.
yeah, it did.
Yeah.
The council denied it. the other one was the Two Oaks was going to be primarily residential, but it had a commercial component to it that got
There may have been others,
vetoed
but
and
yes.
then denial of the rezoning.
Good. Thank you.
Thank you, no problem. Thank you, Sharon.
Yeah, thank you both, yeah.
Any other questions? All right, we're going to leave the public comment period open until our next meeting. Again, I would encourage anyone who is not here tonight, who would like to have their comments shared with the mayor and council, please to email us. Next, we have a review of invoices totaling $1,449,843.20. We have a motion to pay the bills?
I just had a question on one of them, and I'm sorry, Mr. Richardson, I didn't get a chance to ask you before the council meeting this evening, but there was one in there for Bay Country for $78.50 for data wiring at the town office. Is that for security doors, or if you're aware of, I'm not sure.
Mr. Abbatiello, I could certainly look into that.
I appreciate it.
That's $78 and
No, $7,850.
$7,800.
Not $78. I wouldn't ask you about $78.
That was Bay Country Security. They were putting that in.
That was data,
Okay,
connecting offices upstairs so that we could make things cleaner and more efficient in the server room.
thank
So
you.
we wouldn't do it. That
Okay,
included the wiring and the connectors and the labor to pull the wire, terminate both ends.
awesome, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Mrs. Cook?
Yes.
Did you want to read ordinance 756 into the minutes?
I thought I did at the beginning, did I not? All right, we have ordinance number 756, an ordinance of the Town of Easton amending the Town of Easton zoning ordinance to add the use home improvement center and exclude it from the maximum size limitations applicable to major retail uses. Does anyone else have anything to bring to the council this evening?
We didn't pay the bills yet.
Oh, we didn't pay the bills?
Yeah, so I said, motion to
Oh,
approve.
thank you. All right, we have a motion. In a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Now, does anyone have anything to bring before the council? All right, if not, Mr. Silverstein?
I have nothing.
Mr. Abbatiello?
Nothing this evening, thank you.
Nothing this evening.
And I also have nothing. So I'll take a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.